You cannot tweet a Strait open, and you cannot bomb your way to a negotiating table you already burned down. Donald Trump is acting like a man trying to force a complex war through a broken control panel. He hits one button, then another, louder every time, as if volume can replace strategy. And the Hormuz crisis is now exposing something the White House cannot spin away. There is a difference between raw force and real power. Right now, the world is watching one side demonstrate both and the other side demonstrate neither. This is a story about bridges. The bridges you burn to look tough. The bridges your allies quietly stop crossing. The bridges that, once gone, do not come back just because the missiles stop. And it is a story about who is building while Trump is burning. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what just happened, why this approach keeps making the crisis worse, and why the world you are living in today already looks structurally different from the one you woke up in 1 week ago. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a business partner. Every advisor warns you that your pressure tactics are backfiring, that the people who could broker a solution are losing confidence in you. But you keep going anyway. Louder, harder, more public. And one by one, the people who could have helped you start stepping back. They stop taking the calls. They start building their own arrangements. They start treating your volatility as a risk to manage rather than a partnership to honor. Now, the crisis is live, and you are standing at a control panel with buttons that no longer connect to anything. Hold that thought. Drop your answer in the comments. At what point does pressure stop being strategy and start being self-destruction? Let us rewind the clock. This did not begin with one bad speech. It began when the Iran file stopped being treated as a diplomatic problem to be managed and started being treated as a stage for political performance. The core assumption in Trump's playbook is always the same. Every opponent is just one threat away from folding. But that is not how this region works. States like Iran respond with patience, deniability, maritime pressure, energy leverage, and political narratives built for endurance. While Trump world treats outrage like strategy, other players have spent years building quieter options. Back channels, fallback routes, Plan B. One side keeps confusing intimidation with control. The other side has been preparing for a longer game, not with speeches, with networks, not with slogans, with infrastructure. 3 receipts, 3 moves that reveal exactly where this crisis is heading. Receipt number 1, the infrastructure trap. There is a logic that keeps appearing in the Trump approach. Apply pressure to logistics, squeeze the economic lifelines, make the cost of resistance unbearable in civilian terms. Officially, the language is sanitized, deterrence, degrading capacity, restoring credibility. In plain language, it means this. If you do not give in, the systems that keep your country functioning become part of the pressure campaign. That logic has 2 catastrophic flaws. The first is legal and moral. The moment a conflict expands beyond military targets into civilian infrastructure, allies start calculating their own exposure. European governments read legal opinions. Gulf states think about optics. The coalition starts developing visible cracks. The second flaw is strategic. When the target concludes, the war is no longer about military capability, but about social paralysis and regime survival. It does not become more flexible. It becomes more entrenched. Hardliners gain ground, moderates lose room. Civilian fear becomes propaganda fuel. Every strike becomes a recruiting poster. This is why the triumphalist rhetoric around infrastructure pressure is so reckless. It sounds strong on television, but from a strategic standpoint, it is often a confession that the clean military solution is not arriving, so the pressure spreads outward looking for new leverage points. You can call it coercion. Much of the world will call it something else. And once that perception hardens in allied capitals and in the markets that price risk before the bombs fall, diplomatic space collapses. That is not leverage. That is gasoline. Receipt number 2, the disappearing mediators. Wars do not end because one side talks tougher. They end because somebody can still carry messages between enemies who cannot talk directly. That is why the quiet channels matter. Oman matters. European intermediaries matter. Regional governments with credibility on both sides matter. And here is the problem playing out in real time. The people and channels most capable of carrying an off-ramp keep getting sidelined, discredited, politically poisoned. Officially, leaders still say they are open to dialogue. In plain language, they keep burning the ladders that would let them climb down. If your entire approach signals to the other side that negotiation is just surrender with paperwork, eventually nobody serious will stick their neck out to mediate. The reputational risk is too high, so the bridges disappear one by one, quietly. Once possible interlocutors step back, escalation becomes the default, not because anyone chooses it, but because there is nothing else left. Military planners replace diplomats, timelines replace trust. The war begins to feed itself. You do not build a path to peace by burning the bridge to peace and calling it strength. Receipt number 3, the choke point and the price you are already paying. The Strait of Hormuz is not some abstract strip of water. It is a pressure valve for the world economy. And you do not need a total shutdown for it to matter. You only need credible risk. Risk of mines, risk of drone attacks on tankers, risk of retaliation cycles that insurers cannot price with confidence. That uncertainty alone is enough to move markets. Insurers raise costs before ships are hit. Crews hesitate before routes are blocked. Tankers reroute before the order comes. This is where the blunt force fantasy collapses. Hawks talk as if a sea lane can be forced back to normal by attitude. But markets are not moved by chest thumping. They are moved by probabilities. And when one of the world's most important energy choke points sits inside a live military confrontation with no visible diplomatic off-ramp, the price ripple spreads outward fast. Shipping costs, fuel prices, insurance premiums pass through to every product that moves by sea. Inflation expectations that force central banks into impossible positions. The market does not wait for a formal announcement of catastrophe. It prices fear early, and it does not give the money back when the politicians eventually claim victory. If this analysis is connecting dots you have not seen assembled anywhere else, hit subscribe right now. This crisis is moving faster than any single outlet can track. Most leaders, when a crisis explodes, either panic publicly or perform strength publicly. Real strategists build options quietly. They open back channels. They hedge supply routes. They prepare the architecture for a world in which Washington may be loud but not always dependable. That is what you are watching from European capitals. From Gulf states simultaneously hosting American bases and opening conversations with Tehran. From middle powers building redundancy into their strategic planning, not with missiles, with networks, with quiet institutional preparation. Meanwhile, Trump keeps reverting to the same playbook: personal grievance, public pressure, short deadlines, the politics of humiliation. While he obsesses over domination, everyone else is building the bypass. You do not beat instability by performing more instability. You do not win by burning every bridge and then being surprised there is nothing left to cross. So what does this mean for you? If you drive, fuel matters. If you buy groceries, transport costs matter. If you invest, energy shocks and inflation expectations matter. And once companies and governments restructure around a new risk map, they do not snap back because the headlines cool down. Once a supply chain moves, it stays moved. Once allies learn they need insurance against American volatility, they do not unlearn that lesson. The detour becomes the road. The backup becomes the primary. And the old architecture does not reassemble just because a press conference announces it has been restored. 3 paths forward. Managed reset. Fear of a wider catastrophe forces everyone toward face-saving de-escalation. The rhetoric cools. Quiet intermediaries carry a message. Markets breathe. But even in this best case, the structural changes remain. The hedges stay. The trust does not return. Every government that built a bypass keeps it operational because now they know they need it. Domino realignment. Middle powers copy the bypass logic at scale. More regional diplomacy without America at the center. More energy coordination designed to reduce exposure to one volatile actor. The United States remains large and militarily formidable, but no longer the unquestioned axis. Still big, less obeyed. And in geopolitics, that distinction is everything. Escalation spiral, more infrastructure pressure, more proxy attacks, a read, "Signal in the Gulf triggers a retaliation cycle nobody can fully control. Oil spikes hard, inflation returns. Domestic politics gets more militarized and more angry." Everybody says they want to avoid regional war right up until they have built one by increments. And the man at the broken control panel keeps hitting buttons louder every time, wondering why nothing responds. The bridges Trump is burning are not just diplomatic. They are structural, the invisible architecture of trust and mediation that makes the global system function between crises. When those bridges go, the crises do not end. They become more expensive and more dangerous for everyone, including the people who cheered for the burning. You cannot tweet a Strait open. You cannot bomb your way to a table you already burned. And you cannot lead a world that has decided quietly to start building around you. Did Trump dismantle American leverage, or did American leverage start dismantling itself the moment it became a vehicle for impulse and spectacle? Is the bypass being built by allies' smart self-protection, or the early stage of a fracture nobody can reverse? And if a leader keeps treating the global order like a personal stage, how long before the rest of the world builds a different theater? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe because the next chapter is coming fast. This story is not slowing down. Do not look away. This content is commentary and analysis for informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial, legal, or geopolitical advice. Consult qualified experts before making decisions based on the information presented.